Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome into our latest TDR Cannabis in 5 presented by Dutchie. As usual, I am your host, Chad Dales. Good to have you here. All right, today's episode, it's all about reading between the lines here because I got something for you. Sometimes what's not said is just as important as what is. We're looking at a recent move by the Trump administration that on surface is about gun rights and marijuana users. But beneath that, it might be telling us something much bigger about the timeline for federal cannabis rescheduling. So go with me here, because here is what I'm thinking. Again, this isn't decisive. This isn't a fact. This is just me kind of reading between the lines. So I'd be curious to get your feedback. So at the conclusion of this video, make sure to leave your comments below because I'd love to hear what you have to say. So let's get into our latest TDR Cannabis in 5 presented by Dutchie. All right, so let's look at a story from earlier this week. The Department of Justice under President Trump, they asked the Supreme Court for more time to respond in a case that challenges the federal ban on gun ownership by marijuana users. The case, which we all know is U.S. versus Hamani. It's part of a broader legal debate over whether cannabis users should be treated as criminals under federal law when it comes to firearm rights. Now, I do want to point out this is a separate issue from rescheduling, and the DOJ didn't ask for a massive delay, just a few weeks. But the new schedule pushes key filings into January and February of 2026, and that's where I feel something gets rather interesting here. Because if you've been following the rescheduling conversation, you know that the administration has been signaling movement since back on August the 11th. We were told the decision would come within a few weeks, but now, 2 months later, we're seeing delays, not just in this case, but across the board. So the question needs to be asked, what is going on right now? So let's now look at this from a legal angle first. If cannabis is indeed rescheduled from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, it's no longer considered an illegal drug under the Controlled Substances Act. Checkmark, we know that. But here's why I bring that up. That would directly undermine the DOJ's argument in this gun rights case, because the entire basis for banning marijuana users from owning firearms is that cannabis is federally illegal. So look at this a little bit further. If the DOJ were to defend that ban in court while simultaneously rescheduling cannabis, then they'd be contradicting themselves, wouldn't they? So that's a legal mess, and it's likely why they're asking for more time, to avoid ruling on an outdated law while major policy shift is in motion. But there's also a political layer here. Let's be real, rescheduling, it isn't just a policy move, it's a political chess piece, and the Trump administration definitely knows that. By pushing this case into Q1 of 2026, they theoretically would be buying more time to align cannabis reform with other milestones. That would include the 2026 budget rollout. It would also include the Republican primary season, and potentially the reintroduction of safe banking. Yeah, I know, we've heard that before. So that's not a coincidence, it's choreography at its best. And speaking of strategic moves, here's a quick word now from Morgan & Morgan. Hey everyone, there's a reason smart investors celebrate when their portfolio jumps 40% in a year, just like there's a reason Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. Think about it. When you're investing, you want the right team in your corner. The same is true if you're injured in dealing with an insurance company, and that is where Morgan & Morgan comes into the equation. Why? Well, they've got more than 1,000 attorneys and over 100 offices nationwide, and they've been fighting for people for over 35 years, and their track record is hard to ignore. Let me explain a little bit further. Case in point, in Florida, a client was offered $350,000, but walked away with $12 million. In Pennsylvania, another client, they turned $650,000 offer into $26 million. That's a 40x return. So in total, Morgan & Morgan, they've recovered more than $25 billion for over 500,000 clients. So really, when you hire him, it's like bringing in a legal army that has your back. Because if you're injured due to someone else's negligence, you deserve to be paid. And let's be honest, not all law firms are created equal. But with Morgan & Morgan, their fee is free unless they win. You can start your claim right now by clicking the link in the description below or by scanning this QR code on your screen with your phone. At the end of the day, if you want what you deserve, make sure you go in with the right team by contacting Morgan & Morgan today. Now, let's get back to the rest of our video. All right, let's now look even further into this, and here's the big question. Does this delay mean rescheduling is off the table for 2025? Okay, let's hold on. Not necessarily, but it does suggest that the timeline is indeed shifting. If the DOJ is asking for more time in a case that hinges on cannabis's legal status, it's likely because they expect that status to what? Change. And they don't want to get caught defending a law that, let's face it, will be rewritten. So that points to a Q1 2026 window for rescheduling, possibly February or even March. Yeah, I know, it's not the feedback that you want. If that indeed is the case, then it will give the administration time to do a number of things that include finalize the DOJ's legal scaffolding, coordinate with Congress, and roll out reform in a way that's politically advantageous. And that is probably the most important why here. But again, I will say this, we're not being definitive here. But one, right now, can only wonder. A lot of time on our hands right now as things are quiet. And we all know during this time, there's a lot of speculation on what could happen and what couldn't happen. That's the stage we're in right now. So for cannabis operators, this delay is more than just a headline. It is indeed a signal that they need to happen now. So let's say if rescheduling does indeed happen in Q1, it would mean that, as we know, 280E goes away. It would unlock margin and cash flow. Valuations would indeed rise, especially for distressed assets, and M&A accelerates as buyers move in on sidelined operators. But if the delay stretches even further, say into summer or beyond, then let's face it, we're looking at more uncertainty, more debt pressure, and more regulatory chaos. Look at this week, we had 3 states where one is getting ready, one is retracting, and one is rewriting. Again, direction from Washington is needed. So the stakes are indeed high, and the industry, let's face it, is watching very closely. But outside of all this noise, let's not forget the core issue in this case. Can marijuana users own guns? And we know right now, under the federal law, the answer is no. But that's being challenged in multiple courts. And if cannabis is indeed rescheduled, the legal foundation for that ban could crumble. And that would be a major shift, not just for cannabis users, but for Second Amendment law. And it's another reason why the DOJ is treading carefully here. It's all about timing, a calculated timing. They're not just defending a statute, they're also managing a domino effect. Yes, we want some sort of feedback and answer right now, but there's a lot of moving parts here. But again, I'll go back to it. Do I think something's going to happen? I do. So what's the takeaway here? This delay isn't just about a court case, in my opinion. It's about sequencing. The Trump administration is likely trying to do a number of things. One of those include avoid legal contradictions, align reform with political milestones, and control the narrative around cannabis rescheduling. It doesn't mean reform is off the table. I don't think so at all. Again, I think something's going to happen, but it does mean the timeline could be shifting and the industry needs to be ready. Because when the announcement comes, it won't be just a policy change, it'll be a market-moving event. So like I said off the top of this video, let us know in the comments below on what you think of today's breakdown. Do you agree? Do you think I'm reading too much into this? Love to get your feedback. So again, let's keep this conversation going. As usual, make sure to like, subscribe, and smash on that bell for all notifications to keep updated on the latest information here at the TDR Cannabis in 5. That's it for now. I'm your host, Shad Dales. I'll see you all back on our latest TDR Cannabis in 5 presented by Dutchie. So long, everyone.